Welcome to another class session with Professor 219 on how to survive as a conservative in today's messed up America. You don't need to know my real name. Let's start with a little fairy tale. The Emperor's New Clothes, reimagined for a 2022 audience as the President's New Brain. Karine Jean-Pierre, the podium is yours.
Take that Fox News reporter out of the room, now! Any questions?
Ms. Jean-Pierre, what did the President have for lunch?
I'm so glad you asked. Mr. Clinton had a Hungry Man TV dinner at his desk while he was on a conference call with the Obamas and the Attorney General. I heated it up in the microwave for him, and an intern brought him some coffee.
No, I meant the real President.
Hold on. I don't have anything on that, what Mr. Obama had. But we have Trevor Noah and Jen Psaki live on the scene at Martha's Vineyard. Jen, what's the latest? He had fresh salmon and an arugula salad. Big Mike had 4 fried chickens and a small Coke. Let's circle back to that.
You know, this is getting really silly. And now let's talk about Los Angeles. Democrat Nury Martinez has resigned as president of the Los Angeles City Council one day after a racist leaked audio recording was released. 2 other city council members and the county's chief labor official also made racist statements on the surreptitiously recorded audio. They may have a riot on their hands. There have already been so-called mostly peaceful protests. Okay? Mostly peaceful protests. A full transcript of the audio was published by the LA Times on Sunday, October 9th. Today is Monday, October 10th. Okay, this is Democrats against Democrats. And as Sun Tzu, the Chinese philosopher, wrote in his book The Art of War sometime around 500 BC, never interfere when your enemy is busy destroying himself. When left-wing Soros-backed District Attorney George Gascon's name was mentioned, Martinez said, quote, "Fuck that guy, he's with the blacks," unquote. Another city councilman named Mike Bonin, who is white, had adopted a black baby. The baby was called Parece Changuito. Translation: he's like a little monkey. Councilman Kevin De Leon compared Bonin's handling of his child to Martinez carrying her Louis Vuitton handbag. He would later refer to Bonin as the council's, quote, 4th black member, unquote. Here's another thing De Leon said, quote, "Mike Bonin won't fucking ever say peep about Latinos. He'll never say a fucking word about us," unquote. Another councilman involved in the recorded conversation, Gilberto Casadillo, told the LA Times that he does not have a recollection of this conversation. How convenient. Both Martinez and De Leon issued apologies over the weekend during the mostly peaceful protests. That wasn't good enough. Martinez is the first to resign. The Labor Council actually threatened the LA Times with a lawsuit in response to the Sunday publication of the transcript. Does this sound familiar? And the LA Times responded by defending their publication of the transcript, saying, "We will publish anything that is newsworthy." Like I've said before, when the Democrats lose their propaganda bureaus, they've lost the war. I have another news flash. Covert bigotry is rampant among Democratic Party politicians, particularly in the big cities. Chicago, New York, Boston, Philly, Detroit, Atlanta, Houston, Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles. It's the same in every big city. All 3 of the major ethnic groups making up their coalition, blacks, Latinos, and whites from either union leadership or the wealthy Ivy League, Stanford, Berkeley elites, hate each other's guts. The radical feminists hate all men, period. And they all hate the LGBTQ community, particularly since they're now all forced to endorse some truly insane transgender ideology. A proposition on the California ballot in the early 2000s would have banned same-sex marriage. Polling showed that blacks were vastly more opposed to same-sex marriage than California whites were. If it had been up to black voters alone, the measure would have passed. Now, this was long before the Supreme Court case of Obergefell versus Hodges legalized same-sex marriage nationwide. But it just goes to show how black people feel about gay people. The Democratic Party coalition is a bundle of splinter groups, all different from each other, all secretly loathing each other, and it's held together with duct tape, baling wire, chewing gum, and post-it notes that are scribbled with carefully composed talking points. But the strongest glue holding them together is their lust for political power, and the ability of each splinter group in the bundle to achieve its own radical agenda once that power is in its talons. Let's move on. The Department of Justice manipulated evidence in the sex trafficking trial of convicted cult leader Keith Raniere. A group of experts that were former FBI workers, backed by famed attorney Alan Dershowitz, claimed on Thursday. That was October 6th. Raniere was convicted in 2019, but now the group of 6 former FBI forensic experts claims the government framed him on the charge of possession of child pornography. They held a virtual press conference on Thursday, joined by Dershowitz, who is representing not only Raniere, but former U.S. Attorney Bud Cummins and several others. Dershowitz said, quote, "If true, this is a historic level of corruption. There must be immediate action," unquote. The forensics experts said they examined the government's evidence and concluded that the digital evidence devices were used to convict Raniere were significantly manipulated. House Judiciary Republicans are looking into the FBI raid of a Pennsylvania pro-life activist's home as part of their probe into what they say is the politicization of the Justice Department under Attorney General Merrick Garland. Representatives Jim Jordan, the ranking member, and Mike Johnson, the Constitution Subcommittee ranking member, sent a letter Friday, October 7th, asking for documents and communications related to the September 23rd arrest of Mark Houck by an estimated 20 agents for alleged violations of the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. Jordan and Johnson wrote in a letter to Attorney General Garland and Jacqueline C. Romero, U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, quote, "Several recent actions by the department reinforce the conclusion that the Justice Department is using its federal law enforcement authority as a weapon against the administration's political opponents. We write to conduct oversight of your authorization of a dawn raid of the home of a pro-life leader in front of his wife and 7 children when he had offered to voluntarily cooperate with authorities," unquote. The arrest came after Mr. Houck was indicted by a federal grand jury for pushing a volunteer abortion escort outside a Planned Parenthood in Philadelphia in October 2021, even though local authorities declined to prosecute the case and a judge threw out a civil lawsuit against Mr. Houck. Mr. Houck pleaded not guilty last month to 2 counts related to shoving the 72-year-old volunteer, causing injuries that required medical attention, according to the federal indictment. Former U.S. Attorney Bud Cummins said, "In recent years, a variety of unrelated revelations have left the DOJ and FBI's reputation in tatters. Their credibility is in question," unquote. Mr. Cummins, most of these revelations are not unrelated. They're related to Barack Obama packing all of the leadership positions as well as the judiciary in the District of Columbia with people whose loyalty is to him and the DNC more than to the American people, the rule of law, and the ethics of their offices. Pete Sturzock, Lisa Page, Sally Yates, James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Tim Tebow, and Kevin Kleinsmith are all gone. Hundreds more remain. They were smart enough to keep their heads down, keep their mouths shut, and keep working for the DNC when these guys were running their mouths and getting fired. Sturzock and Tebow in particular couldn't keep their mouths shut about how much they hate Donald Trump. Things are changing very slowly. We are gaining small victories. Celebrate and be sure to vote next month. Make sure everybody you know who is conservative is registered to vote and votes. Everybody in your family, your friends, everybody. Okay? These hundreds of guys and women who are still working in federal law enforcement and the judiciary, collecting $100,000 annual salaries at your expense and mine, okay? They're still working for the DNC, not for America. In January, when we take back Congress, after you elect a whole bunch of Republicans to Congress, they need to be fired and march to the front doors of their respective buildings with Fox News cameras waiting. I can hardly wait. How about you? Now, there are a couple of other things that have happened in the past few weeks. In the game of baseball, I've always been a big baseball fan. I'm a Cubs fan. I'm a lifelong Cubs fan. But I want to recognize Albert Pujols. He hit his 699th and 700th career home runs in a game against Los Angeles. In Los Angeles. His wife and his family live in Los Angeles and happened to be in the bleachers, so they were able to watch this historic moment. As a lifelong Cubs fan, I say congratulations to Mr. Pujols. There are only 3 other men who have hit 700 home runs in their careers. Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, and Barry Bonds. Albert Pujols is the first Latino. Welcome aboard, mate. Another exciting moment happened. Now let's go back to last year. Do you remember when Major League Baseball moved the All-Star game from Atlanta to Denver to retaliate against the state of Georgia for passing an election security law that required voter ID and took other steps to secure elections? Well, that wasn't very fair. The merchants in the neighborhood around the Atlanta Stadium are almost all owned by minorities, mostly black. They lost about $100 million in business that would have been given to them by the crowds attending the All-Star game. The Atlanta Braves responded by hitting a whole bunch of home runs in August and September of last year, making it to the playoffs, going all the way to the World Series, and winning the World Series, thus forcing Major League Baseball to allow them to host 9 different playoff and World Series games. And those merchants in the neighborhood made $900 million from those crowds. That's what I call poetic justice. Congratulations to the Atlanta Braves. That's about it for now. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. Give me a thumbs up below if you like what you've seen and heard. Share this video with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever. Leave a comment below. I'll try to respond just as soon as I can. Stay safe. Take care of your families. Stock up on ammunition and canned goods. And I'll see you next time. And get ready to vote.